All right. Hey, this is Brent Leary, and I do really feel like I'm the new BBC for some reason, the Brent Broadcasting Channel or something like that.
I
Because
kind of like that.
you do. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Well, if Ron Miller from TechCrunch likes it, maybe I'll stick with it. So
Why
wait.
not?
Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
So I know yesterday you put out a tweet, and you're up in Boston, and you're, I like to say, a notorious Boston sportsman.
All
But
right.
there's one subject that I don't think you really want to talk about right now, or maybe not ever again. It's that guy
He
who
who shall
spent
not be named.
he who shall not be named, who spent 20 years up in New England and
Just bringing us 6 Super Bowls.
six Super Bowls. But even that, that does not save him from the wrath of the Boston sports fan right now.
That's right. A fan scorned and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
It
So
wasn't bad enough he left, but then he got Gronk to go with him.
was that the killer? Was it Gronk?
I,
Was that it?
that definitely didn't help. But but now he's like showing up everywhere, and he's like Mr. Open, and like he never let anybody see who he was for real when he was here. He was just like super, tight in terms of what he showed the world. Now he's talking about all this stuff about his personal life, and I'm just like,
so you're getting all the things that you guys were craving when he was your quarterback. Now he's just throwing it out there for everybody.
yeah, I know. And I mean, the thing that actually got me to tweet yesterday was a video of him that was on ESPN, and they like ESPN thinks like I want Tom Brady news all the time, and I don't. And this one was about how happy he is to be in Tampa Bay, and I'm like,
Oh, so you don't want to hear?
You
don't want to hear about that?
I definitely don't. Definitely don't.
All right. Well,
See, I'm wearing my TC sweatshirt today, actually.
There it is. See,
yeah, I'm rocking that.
I will always, regardless who the quarterback is, and we've had some bad ones, I will always be a Rams fan. All right. You've been, as usual, pretty busy over the last week writing stuff.
Yeah, I've been real busy.
Yeah, well, you don't have anywhere else to go, man.
That's right. Nothing else to do but write.
So I just want to talk about a couple of things. Because I mean, I'm talking about them, you're talking about them, you're writing about them. And sometimes it's really cool to just kind of bring things together and see from different perspectives and things like that. So one thing that really caught everybody's attention, I guess it was a week ago Sunday when this came out, about the CEO switcheroo or change up at SAP, where Jen Morgan, who was the co-CEO with Christian Klein, and I think they were only co-CEOs for like 6 months.
Yeah, it was just 6 months before they pulled the plug on that. Yeah,
6 months. So you really didn't get a sense that she got a chance to settle in, or
no, not at all.
Feel like it before she is moved on. And I guess the technical wording is mutual agreement. So
sure.
we'll stick with that.
Mutual.
So how surprised were you when you heard that?
I was pretty surprised. I'll be honest. When you look at the kind of model, which was Larry Ellison with Safra Katz and Mark Hurd over at Oracle, and that went well for 4 years before Mark passed away last year. And you had a similar kind of dynamic there, as you have with Hans Plattner at SAP. You have this super strong kind of leader at the top of the food chain, and then you had these co-CEOs who were going to kind of divide up the work. But it seems like SAP had second thoughts on this in light of the pandemic and in light of what's happening with the economy as a result of that, and they decided that moving forward they wanted to go with a single leader, and they chose Christian. I don't know why they chose him over her or what the thinking was there, but obviously they saw something that they decided that he was the best way to go. I was like kind of thinking like, is there any sexism involved here? I don't have any evidence of that, but there's so few female leaders out there, and for her to step away, I don't. It sounds like the board kind of said, we're going with this person. Do you want to step back? And she was like, no, I'm moving on. Again, this is all speculation on my part, but I think that the timing, just 6 months after, it just seemed odd to me that they would make a move so soon after they made the announcement, and like trying to settle in with life after Bill McDermott, who left last fall to ServiceNow, and it was kind of a strange circumstance. But I guess this pandemic and the economic conditions that it's created have created this kind of mode where people are just trying to do things in a more conventional way. And I guess they thought that going with the single leader would show, the market that it was a more cohesive kind of approach. I'm not sure that's true or not true, but I guess that's what they were thinking.
Well, it seemed like for a while there was this kind of the move to the co-CEO model, because you had Mark Hurd with
Right.
Satya Katz and Mark Benioff with Keith Block for a while too.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so and then
Because
you
it's
had
just a big job at these big companies, right? I mean,
yeah.
for one person to do everything is asking that person an awful lot of that person. And, if you want any kind of life at all outside, your company, having that co-CEO model kind of gives you that ability. I mean, assuming that you work well with a person and there's a give and take and each person has their strengths. And certainly with Keith and Mark, they did. Mark's the outgoing sales guy and Keith is like the behind the scenes sales guy. And, it seemed to work well with Safra and Mark too, in terms of how they presented themselves publicly. And, for like I said, SAP decided that it was time to move on from this, and that's what they did. And we'll see how it goes with them from here. They gave some pretty uneven guidance, I guess, after they made this announcement, and so nobody's going to have a great quarter. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too about the co-CEO model, when you look at these companies, I mean, for example, Salesforce, started out basically as SFA in the cloud before it was the cloud. But then, through acquisition and growth, I mean, they are into so many other things now.
Right.
It makes it kind of how does one person manage all of that? And you saw what Oracle. I mean, you could look at that and say that's almost
a similar dynamic, right?
It's even bigger because they cover even more ground,
right?
And SAP to a certain extent too. And so you kind of say maybe this is the model of the future for these enterprise software companies who keep extending their reach, as they build out their platforms. But now all of a sudden, unfortunately with Mark Hurd's passing, that was one instance. But now, I mean, with Keith Block moving on and now with what happened at SAP, it looks like we're back to the single CEO model.
Yeah, I mean, I think for now we might see that, and then, who knows what happens in the future, but it may be that people move back towards that model because of what we just discussed, that it's a huge burden for anybody to be able to handle, all of the kinds of decision making that go on in that job when you have a company that large.
Yeah, and you have to think like you look at the other companies like Salesforce. I mean, excuse me, Microsoft. I don't see Satya Nadella needing a co-CEO the way that he's running.
He seems to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, kind of. He's kind of doing pretty good. And I can't imagine any other company kind of needing to go that route if those guys aren't going that route.
Right. Well, I mean, as I say, these are unique circumstances with the economy the way that it is, and I mean, I think there's a tendency. I mean, certainly with Salesforce, it was just, I think Keith wanted to move on. It was well before we had any idea of the extent of what COVID would do to everything in our lives. But I think with SAP, they were just looking at the economic picture and saying, let's just try and go the most conventional route we can to get, the maximum we can out of this. And whether that is a good decision or not, we might not know what was what when we get down to a point where we can judge it. But, that's what they think.
I guess the one question I have for SAP is, what does this do? I'm a CRM guy, so what does this do? They had recently brought on Bob Stutz,
Right,
who had kind of started there and then made his way around the enterprises, Oracle and Microsoft and Salesforce, and now he's back at SAP heading up. He's the president of the CX,
right,
and then he brought in a good buddy of mine, but beyond that, a true thought leader with Esteban Kolsky.
right.
And I wonder what this does. How does this change what they are trying to do or what they want to do at SAP from CX?
I don't know that it's going to have a huge impact on that. I don't know though, and I mean, I guess from what some of the people I talked to suggested that Christian was more product centric and that they're really trying to, focus on product. That would suggest that that would be a good thing for the CX division. But, we're going to have to wait and see how this all falls out because, on its face, it wouldn't seem to me that it would matter. That Bob is going to do what he does, and he does it really well.
Right.
Wherever he's gone, he's produced pretty good results. And whether that who's his boss, I don't know if that matters. He's going to do his strategy to within the course the realm of however the company decides to approach the market in this kind of crazy dynamic.
Well, all right. So one thing that's been a crazy dynamic over the last couple of months, I guess, is the rise of Zoom. I mean, I don't know you. I'm assuming you're the same. You probably have never been on as many Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars and Zoom everything as over the last 4 weeks.
I mean, I Zoom with my family all the time. I Zoom with friends all the time. This is the only way you can stay connected to people that you love and, people that you work with who may be people you love or maybe not. And, Zoom has been a godsend in that. It's also had, its share of problems because I don't think that it was prepared, to go to 300 million users as quickly as it did. And, a lot of security issues have kind of emerged from that, and they're working to fix those. Right now, it's a tough position for them because they have become like this mega go-to platform for video conferencing at a time where people desperately need it. And I was saying, actually, I had an idea that I put on Twitter a couple of weeks ago that to take some of the pressure off the free tier and to give people who want, longer than the 30 or 40 minutes that you get on the free tier, that you could pay like $5 a month. And then that would give them some money to play with. And I think a lot of people would pay that to get X number of calls over the minimum per month. And they wouldn't get unlimited like the $15 a month tier, but they would get, a certain number. And I think that would be useful for people. And, the fact is that what's happening to Zoom right now is that this free tier is certainly driving usage, but it's driving usage. So it's like, it's putting a lot of pressure on their systems.
Right.
So, if they charge just a little bit of money to consumers who wanted to pay that might offset some of the cost of the free tier and give them, a little bit more capital to work with, over the long term. But, right now you can't argue with how they're doing in terms of just pure usage.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to tighten some things up. And I think it's probably things that they would have tightened up down the road when, it became more apparent that's what they needed to do. But, things become apparent when you put pressure on systems, right. and systems have been put under pressure and they've been forced to kind of regroup on the fly. But, I saw a tweet by Aaron Levy the other day. He said, you could see them getting to 1 billion users, without, they were at the 300 million. I don't know how fast it was, but it was really fast. And it's become the go-to platform. If they can tighten things up and really, become more secure and more reliable, they're going to be, and really a company to reckon with.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, you see like Facebook's making some moves there with Facebook. What do they call that thing? Facebook Rooms or Facebook?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah, I mean,
something
I'm
like
not a
that.
Facebook user, so
Yeah. Well, and apparently, Zoom also there were some issues with how they were sharing information with Facebook. So
right,
a
right.
lot of enterprises did, and then of course the whole what do they call it, Zoom bombing or something like
Yeah, I
that.
mean that was
Yeah.
a real problem, and I had heard that they had been warned about that. I don't know if that's true, but you know, they might not have thought, that certain things were as if when you're a startup, or I mean they're a public company now, but they're still a young company, and when you're a young company, you have a roadmap and you have priorities, and certain things take priority over others. And I think those priorities got pushed up really fast when you had things like Zoom bombing.
Yeah.
And, there's ways to handle that. You can have waiting rooms, you can have uh, passwords. There's all kinds of ways to handle that. But until you knew that was a problem, you didn't really know it was a problem.
Right.
And I think most people now know how to kind of offset that, and we're not seeing that as much. But there are other problems that have cropped up now, and they're trying to deal with those. So,
Right.
when you do scale quickly, it's going to have all kinds of impact on your systems, and you have to kind of address those as quickly as you can. And I think they're trying to do that.
Right. Well, and the other thing, it seems like, this is also, you see Microsoft Teams, trying to kind of catch the wave there. But I also, you wrote about something here about this acquisition that Verizon made of Blue Jeans. I mean, talk a little bit about that and how maybe, the rise of Zoom is going to spur moves like this and maybe some other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say before I talk about this that Verizon owns TechCrunch. Um, so the fact is that it's easy to look at this, and this is what I wrote about. That it's easy to look at this and say, okay, look, Zoom is so hot right now, and video conferencing is so hot right now that Blue Jeans they purchased Blue Jeans simply because they wanted to ride this work from home trend. But when you dig into the story, they've actually been working together since last June. They first started strategic partnership where Verizon would be selling Blue Jeans through their sales team, and then it sort of went deeper than that, and the talks eventually turned around the first of the year to something deeper, and actually purchasing them. And from what the guys at Blue Jeans were telling me, they were looking for a way to capitalize, and they didn't know whether they wanted to go get more money from VCs or exit in a different way. And they ended up having this discussion with Verizon, and it ended up working. You know, everybody puts a happy face on an acquisition during the acquisition phase. It ended up being something that seemed to work out well for both sides. Verizon gets this enterprise grade video platform, and from everybody I talked to, like Blue Jeans is considered like the gold standard here. When we were talking about some of the problems that that Zoom was having, as they kind of straddle both consumer and enterprise, Blue Jeans was kind of built from the ground up as an enterprise tool. So they're a little bit tighter in that regard, and they have a reputation of delivering a really solid video and audio experience. So from that perspective, they made sense for Verizon, and from Blue Jeans perspective, they were looking to grow. And how do they grow without without some kind of either capital, or and they hadn't taken money since 2015. So
Wow.
obviously they were making money, but could they grow? I think they have like 15,000 customers is what I wrote. And how could they grow beyond that, and kind of move forward? And they saw this acquisition as a way to do that. Verizon saw it as a way to kind of push their video portion of their platform forward, especially in a 5G context. And they're thinking telemedicine, and they're thinking online education, all of which still has to do or has come to the forefront because of this epidemic or pandemic. But these are things that they were looking forward to anyway. and this purchase kind of accelerates all that for both sides of the equation.
One thing I was thinking about, in addition to everything you just said, is well, I'm using StreamYard, and there's every one of these kind of services is just seeing a huge uptake in terms of usage. Like that Restream and all
Yeah,
these
all of them. I
services.
mean,
Yeah,
everybody for sure.
yeah. So I'm looking at, we're actually on LinkedIn Live here right now, but I'm looking at LinkedIn, who is still on the beta program for LinkedIn Live, but from all accounts, this is going to be whenever they open it up, the floodgates are going to open up on streaming content on LinkedIn.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. But then you also have Microsoft Teams, and we all know that LinkedIn is a part of Microsoft Teams.
That's right.
Is this going to be where kind of the walls start to come down, and you'll start to see more Microsoft using LinkedIn, LinkedIn using Microsoft, because there's some huge synergies, and prospects here at play. And do they LinkedIn or Microsoft, do they eventually buy something like a StreamYard who helps them with the streaming capabilities and brings that to the table of what they already have?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that, Brent, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And you know, Microsoft spent like $26 billion for LinkedIn. It was a huge investment. From what I understand, some of it is paying for itself in terms of the sales tools that they've created around it and trying. I mean, we're already seeing it's integrated with Dynamics more. So from that perspective, the walls came down anyway, right? But sure, when LinkedIn starts to get more into this kind of media platform kind of approach and moving just beyond pure social network, then it would make sense to try and tie that in to some extent with Teams and some of the offerings that Microsoft is offering with that product. And, you know, pulling that all together and seeing how that comes together. I mean, they have to find a way to kind of pull all these pieces together, whether it's Skype for Business, which I'm going to be honest, I've never really enjoyed using, you know, or LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live and Microsoft Teams and all these pieces and how they pull them together into a coherent platform. Sure, they can bring down the walls, but they have to do it in a way that's sensible and kind of streamlines all of this for users so it doesn't feel like it's like 3 or 4 different things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they're capable of doing that, but inside a large company, sometimes things get lost. And it'll be interesting to see if they're capable of doing that in a way that kind of makes this into something more than, kind of, kind of a fun thing to distribute something like this through, or, you know, um, becomes, more of a go-to business tool.
I've been thinking. I even like the last article I did for Sierra Magazine. It was how I think Netflix could. I mean Netflix. LinkedIn could potentially be like a Netflix for business content if they're able to pull these things together. That's a big if, but that's a big opportunity too. That I see somebody. And I think LinkedIn has the potential to do it, could really do something like great looking premium content to a certain extent, business focused, because they already have the audience for it. And why couldn't they become a kind of Netflix of sorts for business content?
I mean, I would see it more as a YouTube, but you know, but
Well, yeah.
but yes, I mean, it could be that. It could be like video podcasts for all intents and purposes. And I mean, look, you're seeing lots of things happening now. Where TechCrunch, for instance, like many companies, are unable to do their live events. So we're doing these live events online now, and we just started with that. It's called Extra Crunch Live, and you could see content like that maybe being repurposed. I mean, I know it's going on YouTube, for instance. So if there were a business channel for that, that would make even more sense than YouTube, right? So everybody's experimenting right now.
Right.
This is this is what makes this a super interesting time. We're being forced on the fly to kind of redefine how we deliver some content we used to deliver in person, and hopefully will again. But even when we do that, I think that some of the lessons that we learned from doing stuff like this, getting together like this, and distributing this to a wider audience is going to be something that we see a lot more of in the future, simply because we learned a lot about how to do it right now. And businesses are going to be using this as a kind of social marketing channel. And, I mean, if you go back to the idea of content marketing, just blogging and HubSpot and all of that, what's the next wave of that? It's this, right? And, people have been doing podcasts for sure for a long time, and some people think maybe too much. But there are a lot of good ones out there, though, and a lot of ones that I enjoy. And, being able to put people's faces as well out there and being able to kind of connect in that way is a whole new kind of marketing channel, content marketing channel. And I think that's going to be very appealing to, a lot of companies, both media and non-media companies. And, David Meerman Scott, who was the guy who wrote the book on a lot of this back in like 2006, mm-hmm. He always said that, companies need to think more like publications. They need to actually even hire journalists because, people don't want to be brochured anymore. They're not going to use a glossy brochure. I mean, this isn't anything new now. It was pretty radical when David wrote it originally. Right. And he was sort of ahead of the curve, that you needed to reach people in different ways than you are right now. And this is just another new way. And if LinkedIn can capitalize on that and provide that as kind of a channel for that, that would be, a huge new outlet for them, I think, in terms of content.
And you had to bring up David Meerman Scott. Doesn't he live up there too? Isn't he like a,
He does. He lives in Concord.
So in other words, he's a Boston sports fan. Thanks for that.
I don't know if he's a Boston sports fan. I know he's a huge Grateful Dead fan, though.
I thought if you lived up there, it was against the law to not be a Boston.
I don't know. Not everybody's in love with sports.
Hey, this has been great, Ron. I told you I was going to try to keep you to 30 minutes, and we could talk all day if we weren't talking about Tom Brady, of course. But
really, we're not going to talk about him.
Oh, this is great, man. So I really appreciate it. I am very anxious to see how all this Zoom stuff plays out, and how people, more people come on, more ways and creativity around how it's used. And I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, I find myself trying things out. And I'm on top of doing what we're doing here. I was a college DJ, and I still have all my DJ equipment, and to see what the DJ community has done with this live streaming, because they can't go to their clubs because people aren't supposed to, like,
all right. I mean, you can have big crowds like dancing on the dance floor, right?
Right. So to see what's happened with the live streaming of DJ sets on all these channels, and to the point where you can't buy any DJ equipment anymore because they're gobbling it up. They're gobbling up the technology that allows you to stream and get great audio into, their live streams. It's all gone. I mean, it's all sold out, and it's because of the creativity that people have. And it'll be amazing to see where we are like 6 months to a year from now.
It will.
Yeah.
One other thing before we sign off, I wrote this piece last week about how sports is going to have to adjust to this, and what are they going to do? And, you mentioned what DJs are doing, and we saw the NFL draft this week, which went, surprisingly smoothly. And, you got to see the inside of people's houses, and
You
you
know,
know, Bill
I thought,
Belichick's dog, who's pretty,
yeah,
actually a pretty cool dog.
I thought it was really great because it seemed like you got more of you saw the human, the human
Right?
side of all these people. You saw like the GMs and their kids jumping up and
Yeah,
down after they made their picks, and you
right.
see like the guys getting picked with their families, and when you see them at New York or Madison
Las
Square
Vegas.
Garden,
Yeah,
it's all polished, and it seemed like they're playing too much to the camera.
yeah.
Whereas this was just great to see. Like I just love seeing the little kids, after their dads or the GMs made a pick,
Yeah.
jumping up and having such a good time, and because you just don't see that side of these guys, and it was
See,
really
and I mean, nobody probably even thought about that when they were thinking about. I mean, they were thinking like, this is going to suck, right? We're
yeah, right.
we're all going to be in a stuck in our houses, and like, how are we going to make trades when we don't even know if the phone line? I mean, I thought there were going to be a lot of trades early, and there weren't, and I was speculating with my son that maybe they were afraid, to make trades because of the clock and the technology and everything. But
Right.
it turns out they did a lot of trades as time went on. So if they were, a little bit reluctant to do it, they figured it out. But it did show a side of things that we wouldn't have seen. And like, I think if we do, if we have these tournaments that they're talking about, whether in the NBA or MLB or whatever it is, without fans, like if you mic up the players and you hear the trash talk and you hear the kind of what they're thinking out there, and like I said in the article, maybe we have communities. Maybe the players, when they're in the dugout or on the bench, they start interacting with these communities, and there could be like sides of this that we never imagined that kind of open up possibilities of how to interact between fans, and like kind of take down that barrier that exists between
Right.
the athlete and the fan, and really use technology to break that down. And I think that could be a lot of fun and and interesting. I mean, I look forward to the day when fans are back in the stadium, believe me. But I think some interesting experiments could come out of this that will be then layered on top of the fan experience when you go back.
I give the NFL a lot of credit. They didn't just try to, like you said, just port a watching TV experience onto the online experience. They took advantage of the benefits that digital online technology gives you to engage, as opposed to just trying to say, oh, we'll just shoot what we normally shoot instead of for the TV, we'll just shoot it for the
Right.
internet. So I think that was great. And then I guess the bottom line for that is I saw where viewership, I don't even know how they do it. Viewership
It
up
was huge.
32%.
It was huge. I mean, I don't usually watch the draft. I find the draft kind of boring, and it's a crapshoot. There's this whole you know draft industrial complex that develops around all these prospects, and most of these guys are going to flame out. It's just the nature of the business. There'll be a handful that become serviceable players. There'll be another handful who become stars, but in general, these guys don't last very long in the league, and it's a very tough adjustment from college to the NFL, and it's a hard game. And you know, this time it was like, oh wow, this is something related to sports. Oh my gosh, I want to watch this.
Well, it's that in The Last Dance. I mean, everybody is talking about this 30 for 30 on Jordan and the Bulls.
Yeah,
Something that he hasn't played a game in 20, well, almost 20 years. He hasn't
right,
been a Bull since 1998.
right.
But everybody is talking about this, and
I
I
haven't seen
I
it
love.
yet. I really want to see it.
Oh man, you're already 4 episodes behind, man. You
Yeah,
better catch up.
I know. I
All
know.
right. Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate it. This has been great. We definitely ought to do this more often.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you want.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye bye.